It all started back in 1972, with the great success of the game Pong, launching the gaming industry on a path to becoming the largest entertainment industry, beating out films and music. But in recent years, all I keep hearing is gaming doesn't feel the same anymore. So many negative stories about bad game launches, bad work culture in the industry, and tons of monetization in gaming, and taking advantage of some of the biggest fan bases in games. The question is, has the gaming industry lost its spark? But to look at that, I think we should look at how the gaming industry is today. Yearly releases of the biggest franchises, the usual culprits of games like FIFA and Call of Duty, with some other games like Assassin's Creed coming out with similar games every few years or every other year, leading to these games having no innovation and almost copy and pasting game features into their new installment, taking advantage of the fan base and just milking them for money, let's be real. There's huge stories coming out about the bad work environment in the gaming industry around companies like Activision Blizzard, Ubisoft, Nintendo and Riot Games, talks of harassment, sexism and also horrible work crunches, pushing out some of these huge games to still a poor product. Not to mention most games now have some sort of monetization in forms of battle passes, loot boxes, cosmetics, which to be honest aren't all bad. Some of them given great value and chances to give back to some of the developers you love, but most really aren't worth it. Most are just cheap tricks to get you to pay money over and over again, just to not feel that FOMO. Then the final straw, addictive gameplay features being put in everyday games like daily rewards, more loot boxes, and time-limited events so you feel like you've got to get it done. Not to mention the plethora of microtransactions. This leads us on to the problem. The games we played and loved growing up, well, for me anyway, have become industry giants. Some of these games have found their formula and stuck with it for way too long. Games like Call of Duty went from making such an innovative, genre-defining game like Call of Duty 4 to releasing almost the same game every year, with no innovation and honestly a lack of creativity. Then there's Assassin's Creed that started out with a new take on stealth and traversal gameplay in the action-adventure genre, but then churned out tons of sequels, not all bad mind you, then randomly changed their whole genre over to an RPG, with Assassin's Creed name just smeared all over it. And I'm not saying these games are bad, but I do find it weird that they would butcher a beloved franchise, changing its whole formula, rather than just starting something new and making some really good RPG games. But instead they decide to milk it for all it's worth, bloating out the game with huge maps and repetitive features. I always found I loved the vibe of these games, and a lot of the time the setting too. I'd get bored quickly and not really be interested in some random Assassin's Creed plot just sprinkled in. Quick pause, trying to hit 1,000 subs, so subscribe if you want more videos like this. Thank you, bye. Then there's FIFA. Very similar to the Call of Duty formula with their yearly releases, but a lot worse. FIFA rolls out year by year with an alarming business model. I've always seen FIFA as a game with a yearly wipe cycle, similar to games like Tarkov, in a weird example, where the games come to a point where they wipe your progress for a fresh start. But if you've played FIFA before, you know this isn't how it works. FIFA doesn't wipe the existing game, it forces the player base to buy their new installment, taking away any of the work or money they've put into these games, just to buy the same game over, with minimal changes to gameplay and players with slightly different stat changes. And let's be real, the only reason people buy these new versions is FOMO. And of course, EA just make tons of money from this by selling their very questionable packs. Then there's games being pushed more and more to the live service treatment. Companies releasing games with lacking content and aggressive monetization. Games like Marvel Avengers, Anthem, Suicide Squad and Concord, all coming out with minimum content with the promise of more content through battle passes, DLCs and updates. But all end up failing because of the lack of something that really matters, content. And I'm not saying live service games can't work, but they need to respect the player and have enough interesting gameplay to back it up. Look at Helldivers 2 for example. It exploded in 2024 because it had great gameplay and didn't feel like it was trying to scam us out of our money. Everything was able to be purchased whenever you wanted, no time limits, and the currency could be earned just by playing. And let's be real, it was a hell of a lot of fun. Then some of these companies that we've grown up loving, releasing games too early and giving the players a rough, unfinished product. Companies like CD Projekt Red went from one of the greatest RPGs ever, Witcher 3, to releasing a highly anticipated Cyberpunk 2077 in such a bad state that it got removed from online stores. And obviously they've turned that around now and made the game great, but why has this even happened in the first place? Then that's where the problem truly lies. Greed. Let's be real, we aren't stupid, we understand games aren't made out of the goodness of developers' hearts. Gaming is a huge industry and understandably makes huge money, but this has made the industry into corporate heaven. And with the game design process of these companies getting bigger and longer, money is a huge factor. Developers need to get paid and companies need to stay afloat, leading to taking investments or partnering with these huge companies for funding in return for influence. And at the end of the day, all these companies care for is return on their investment, taking us down a huge rabbit hole of, oh, this game did really well, why not copy that? Or the dreaded, live service games make tons of money, make one of those. And this is where the creative journey of making a video game is destroyed. Getting a bunch of suits that only see ones and zeros, trying to tell passionate creative developers what their game should be. But the gaming industry has always been driven by creativity. This money chasing and trend hopping can only go so far. Gaming isn't a science. If companies poured love and passion into a game, then there'll always be gamers out there who'll love it. And that's shown so much in some of these smaller solo dev games like Stardew Valley, Kenshi and RimWorld. It started off with solo devs just enjoying the process, loving their work, and then turned into a hugely successful game. So why can't these companies understand? Just let the devs cook and the money will follow. But after all of that, this takes us to the downfall. These huge companies are beginning to stumble and some are even starting to fall from grace. It feels like almost every week now I see some story about Ubisoft, from their high game prices and lackluster games to them almost getting bought out by Tencent, which I'm sure will not help them one bit. Funny enough, as I was making this video, Ubisoft have just sold Tencent a 25% stake in some of their games and have created a dedicated subsidiary for 3 of their largest franchises, so that's pretty interesting. Then of course Bethesda, a studio loved in the past, now has lost their reputation after a few bad/underwhelming releases and even putting the hype around their long-awaited Elder Scrolls 6 into doubt. Then of course Xbox continues their monopoly of the gaming industry, collecting companies like Infinity Stones, maybe even being a bigger problem than we think, and PlayStation trying to follow suit with trying to buy From Software recently. But I think there is light at the end of the tunnel. Indie games are getting bigger than ever, coming out building huge audiences, even rivaling some AAA games. With the accessibility of gaming engines, namely Unreal Engine 5, game design is easier to get into than ever. And I know our beloved franchises might be failing, the games we grew up with are starting not to seem that appealing anymore. Games I used to love playing like Call of Duty and Assassin's Creed don't seem to even show up my radar. And even massive future releases like Elder Scrolls 6, like said earlier, are starting to look a little bit worrying. But who knows what's ahead? With new games appearing to take their places, games like Valheim, Lethal Company, Hollow Knight, Hades and Outer Wilds, all bringing new love and innovation to the gaming industry, and fulfilling gamers' needs. At least there is some games to look forward to too, with Rockstar Games seemingly appearing out of nowhere every now and then to release a huge game like GTA 6 coming, From Software always releasing great games like Elden Ring, and the new hidden gems like Warhorse Studios with KCD 2, coming in and redefining the RPG genre, and I'm sure there's plenty more out there. But like I said, there's still light at the end of the tunnel. Just unfortunately, some of these games we've grown up with might be coming to an end. But I'll be real, I'm a little bit of an optimist, so here's hoping that some of these games come back better than ever and we get spoiled as gamers over the next year and get the entertainment we deserve.